Chino Airport in Southern California is the home of the world's only flying Japanese Zero fighter with the original Japanese Sakai engine. This airplane is the property of the Planes of Fame Air Museum based at Chino Airport. Here we show the Zero being restored to flight condition at its base. This particular Zero was captured on Saipan Island in June of 1944. Approximately 5 years of work went into the rebuilding of this airplane. Here Ed Maloney is viewing the engine detail of the 14-cylinder Sakai engine as Mr. Awaki from Japan is doing some final preparation on the engine. Rich Palmer also working on the aircraft engine. Steve Hinton doing some last-minute instrument installations. Don Likens and Tom Cassidy talk over about the flight test. This particular airplane was invited to participate in several Japanese exhibition flyovers of various Japanese cities in the late 70s. Here is shown Don Likens climbing aboard the aircraft. Here the Nakajima 14-cylinder Sakai engine is being run. The Japanese Zero fighter has a different sound than most American engines. This is a well-proven, very reliable engine being used in over 10,000 of these particular aircraft. Here the aircraft is being shown taxiing out to test its landing gear by the pilot Don Likens. Here the aircraft is showing in its first takeoff at Chino Airport. Don gives it the gun, the tail lifts very rapidly, and in a short run of under 1,000 feet, the airplane is airborne. This first flight took place on June 28, 1978, approximately 2:30 in the afternoon. Chase is being done by Jim Maloney in the museum's North American P-51D Mustang. This aircraft was a member of the 261st Japanese Naval Air Corps, based on Saipan. Since it was land-based airplane, the carrier hooks had been removed. Don now goes over with the Air Museum pilots and mechanics and any squawks that he has will be fixed so that the next flight will be made and put more time on the engine. The engine was completely overhauled by Stuart Davis in Long Beach, California, and by mechanics from the Air Museum. Here a discussion is held with Don and Jim Maloney, Steve Hinton, and several of the other pilots and mechanics. Don is entering the first flight in the logbook. This is the original Zero pilot's log. When it was captured on Saipan, returned to the United States, it was brought back to the United States and flown by Charles Lindbergh. You can see his signature there. Here Mr. Kato examines some pieces from a Japanese Zero. Mr. Kato came over from Japan as a representative of the committee to return the Zero to Japan, and you'll see him in various parts of this film. Here Ed Maloney and Don Likens discuss the preparations for shipping the airplane to Japan with members of the Japanese committee to return the Zero to Japan. Here's Mr. Takahashi, Mr. Tomonaga, and Mr. Kato. All the details had to be worked out and finalized before the preparations were made to take the airplanes to the seaport. Here the agreements are signed and agreed upon at the LA Hilton. And here shows the airplane being shipped and slung aboard the automobile carrier ship in Long Beach Harbor. The automobile decks are very small in height, and consequently a special hangar had to be built for the aircraft on the top deck. The aircraft was covered with several layers of plastic, and then this wood hangar was built over the airplane to keep it free from salt air corrosion during its trip to Japan. It was anchored down very securely, and here the automobile liner heads for the port of Tokyo. Mr. Kato is shown boarding the ship here in Tokyo Harbor. The hangar has been removed, and the captain is congratulating Mr. Kato. Here a discussion is held in the main hall of the ship to tell of the purpose of returning the Zero to Japan. This was the first time a Zero fighter had flown over the skies of Japan since the end of World War II. The Zero fighter was slung onto this barge and tied to the dock there. Early the next morning, the barge was towed across Tokyo Bay to the Naval Air Station Kisarazu. This former Japanese naval base was one of the most formidable Japanese bases in World War II. Kisarazu was a training facility at the present time for the Japanese Self-Defense Force. Here shows the Zero fighter in the hangar at Kisarazu. There was a number of preparations that had to be done for the aircraft to prepare it for flight. The hangar had been emptied out. Here we see Mr. Kato welcoming the press corps and distinguished Japanese visitors to the Zero press party. This press preview was to introduce the Japanese newspapers to the aircraft. This Japanese man is presenting a toast. He was a former armament officer on the Zero fighters for the Japanese Naval Air Force. There's Mr. Genda there, who helped plan the Japanese attack on Pearl Harbor. Mr. Don Likens and Ed Maloney congratulating Mr. Kato on his presentation. We move outside now for the Japanese press corps to take their pictures of the aircraft and for the first public view of the aircraft. These air-to-air views showing the Zero flying over the Tokyo harbor and around Kisarazu area. Zero picks up speed quite rapidly heading downhill. Here it comes over in a high-speed pass. It has good zooming ability and has a very good rate of roll. The Sakai engine burns very little fuel, approximately about 35 gallons per hour, which is a very low fuel consumption and very good range for this aircraft. So they could fly from Rabaul and clear on down to Guadalcanal and the Solomon Islands and complete half hour of combat and then return. The yellow stripes on the leading edge of the wing were an identification mark to enable the Japanese to identify their aircraft. The red Hanamaru insignias were not always visible, especially from a head-on angle. The camouflage painting into the Zero fighter at this time was in the Rabaul camouflage finish for the South Pacific jungles. The Zero has a span of 36 feet and was specially built for Japanese carriers. This is a model A6M5 model 52. Here we show a cutaway view of the Zero fighter, the fuel tanks, oil tank, machine gun, cannon installations. Zero is an all-metal aircraft. The control surfaces are all metal covered with fabric. It has a 16-piece built-up wing spar, 2 spars per wing panel, nice wide-track landing gear. Here shows the operational landing gear being deployed. This being a Model 52, it has the jet thrust type engine exhaust ejectors, which gave a little more thrust to the engine. 61-120 was the tailcode of the aircraft. 61 stood for the 261st Japanese Naval Air Corps, the first digit 1 meaning fighter, and 20 was the number 20th aircraft in the squadron. You can see the machine gun ports going through the cowling there. Makes a nice aileron roll. The aircraft burns 35 gallons of fuel per hour, takes 130 octane, very low oil consumption, and the engine performs quite satisfactorily. Making a fighter pass over the field and a pull-up and a roll. The airplane was in Japan for approximately 9 months, during which time it flew for approximately 10 million people on the two lower islands of Japan, Hokkaido and Honshu. During special holidays and events, the Zero would perform at various airfields throughout Japan. Now the pilot's enclosure is pulled back, and for a view of the machine gun handles and the turn-in ball and directional gyro. Had twin 30 caliber machine guns firing through the cowl and twin 20 millimeter cannons in the wing. Pilot control stick, side to side working the ailerons, rudder pedals, rudder bar, working the rudder and elevators. Cowl flap crank handle. Your electric switch box panel. Your throttle handle and propeller control. That fired the cannons and machine guns and smaller switches for the machine guns and selective switch. Zero was actually operational before Pearl Harbor. It was first introduced in combat in China in 1940. Originally designed by Jiro Hirokoshi in 1939 for Mitsubishi. It's built by two Japanese companies, the Nakajima firm as well as Mitsubishi. When it was shown in Japan, over 50% of the people in the viewing audiences have never seen a Zero fighter. The younger generations were especially pleased to see it because they had been told about the airplane from their fathers and uncles. During its tour of Japan, the Zero was flown by 4 different pilots. Don Likens initially took it over, and it was flown by Jim Maloney, Steve Hinton, and John Mazzala. These are currently the only 4 pilots currently checked out to fly the airplane with the original sockeye engine. This display is at the dedication ceremony at Yatsugi Air Base outside of Tokyo in August 1978. This was a ceremony to the Japanese war dead. It was a solemn occasion, and many Zero pilots were in the audience that day, and of course the Zero fighter was the main attraction. Mr. Saburo Sakai, the leading Japanese ace, was in attendance. Here Ed Maloney of the Planes of Fame Museum is saying a few words, greeting to the audience. Mr. Kato is presenting flowers to one of the Japanese pilots who had killed during the Pacific War. Mr. Don Likens of the Air Museum staff. Probably more Japanese pilots flew the Zero than any other type of fighter in the Japanese Naval Air Corps. The Japanese had built some later models as the war progressed, but the Zero is probably the most well-known aircraft of any of their notable fighters. Here the aircraft is rolled out of the hangar, started up, and will perform for the viewing audience. The public, which you cannot see here, lined the outside of the field, approximately about 10 to 20 deep, and the airfield is about 10 miles in circumference. So we asked Mr. Likens to fly a wide circuit so that the people outside the base could see the aircraft as well. To attain its rapid maneuverability and roll rate, the Japanese sacrificed armament. Consequently, the Zero did not have any defensive facilities for its pilot, and could be easily flamed if hit with concentration of fire. There are more Model 52 Zeros built than any other type. This plane was frozen in production during the war and was the largest quantity Japanese fighter built during World War II. More Japanese aces flew the Zero than any other type of aircraft. The leading Japanese ace of the Pacific War was Nishizawa, who had over 100 victories. Saburo Sakai, the leading living ace, had over 62. He is still currently living in Japan and frequently gives lectures on the performance of the Zero fighter and Japanese naval aviation during the Pacific War.